Now, I get out and speak with businesses all the time, and the number one concern they have is what? Workers. That's right. Above government regulation, which comes in a close second. I mean, that's the easiest thing they like to complain about, but when they really get down to it and make a decision, it's finding qualified workers is more of a challenge than dealing with government regulation, than dealing with competition, than dealing with finding customers. And we talked about all this expansion that's going on. Where are we going to find the workers? Now today, a report came out from Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development that talked about the job openings. They're at like a 13-year high. Thousands and thousands of jobs aren't going filled here in Minnesota. You hear other reports. Truck drivers, extreme shortage. We need welders. I was just in South Dakota, and one business said they go into the graduating class, a welding class, and they give a little presentation in front of the class about their business, and they say, this is an open job offer to every single person in this classroom. Yeah. And you find out that overall the economic expansion continues. The number of jobs happening, being created, increases. We're at record levels of jobs right now. We're at record levels of output. The unemployment rate's coming down. Yeah, there's some funny things with that. What about the percentage of the population? What about the discouraged workers, et cetera? But the bottom line is, it is the number one issue for businesses of finding workers, good workers. I better give my disclaimer now that the views expressed today are mine and not necessarily those of the Federal Reserve Bank, Minneapolis Federal Reserve System. Again, the views expressed today are Toby's. They're not necessarily the Federal Reserve's. Okay, so you can find information on our website, minneapolisfed.org. I'm also a twit. Is there any other twits out there? All right, I'm at Toby C. Madden. Maybe we could worship each other or whatever we do in the Twitterverse, you know, the Twitterverse or whatever. Okay, and then also we have the Fed Gazette. Who gets the Fed Gazette here? What do you think? Good? He likes it. This is a business and economics newspaper, and with this, you can find out what's going on without a biased perspective, unless we're talking about monetary policy, of course. But if we're just talking about business conditions, it's in the Fed Gazette. Could you help me pass some of these out? And you can get yours today free of charge by just handing over a business card. So it's not really free, so you got to collect business cards too, okay? So if you reach in your pocket and grab a business card, or write down on the pad of paper your contact information. In addition to the Fed Gazette, which is business and economics, embedded in there is the community dividend, which deals with things like poverty and homelessness and other issues of the community, which are very important. So you can get both these publications today free with your business card. And also with your business card, you can help shape monetary policy. How does that work? Well, maybe I could survey you once in a while and say, hey, what's the biggest issue that you're facing? And then with that, I bring that to my president, Narayana Kocherlakota, and he votes on interest rates. So please, hand in your business card, fill out the very, very short surveys. It'll be from Toby Madden at the Minneapolis Fed, and they're really, really short, just a few more seconds than pressing the delete key. Do you do the surveys down? Anybody do my surveys here? They're not burdensome at all, so please. Okay, that's enough of a commercial interruption. Let's get back to the program. So the program is twofold. First is a longer-term perspective on the economy, and that is how are we going to find the workers? The second part of the program is forget the long term, what's happening now and what's going to happen in the next year in the economy. Okay, so here is the Minnesota labor force growth over a long period of time and projected. We're projecting that we're just going to have a 0.1% increase in workers in the next 5 years. 2015 to 2020 is only going to be 0.3%. 2020 to 2015, or 2025, excuse me, is only 1.1%. So how the heck are we expected to grow the economy and do all these big expansions if we don't have the workforce coming in? And when you look at that workforce, if they're highly educated, they're probably working. So the higher education levels you can get with the workforce, the more productive they are, the more they get paid, and the higher probability that they're not going to be not working. So what are our options? Our options are, of course, we can make more babies, but that's kind of a longer term solution. Another option is for us to become more productive, and that is by training the workers, making sure they're highly educated, making sure they're creative, making sure that we allow the productivity to come through. The second option is to work longer, work in more years. Now here's some gentlemen kind of near my age. When are you thinking about retiring? You're not thinking about retiring, that's good.
Just went down to 4 days a week.
Just went down to 4 days a week, so you're not helping our situation here, no. Now some people say, well, it's great that we had that terrible recession because then the workers are going to be around longer and we can use them up during our time of crisis that we're going to be entering into or already have entered into. And then the other alternative is immigration. If we allow more people from outside the area to come in, then we'll have more workforce, and not only that, we'll have more jobs. How does that work? Usually you say, well, wait a minute, the immigrants come in and they steal all our jobs. No, when the immigrants come in, they demand a lot of jobs. How does that work? Well, let's say a family moves in from a different country, and they got some kids, and maybe they have a mother-in-law or something, and there's 2 people available to work out of 5. You have 5 people demanding food. You have 5 people demanding services. You have 5 people demanding shelter. You have 5 people demanding clothing. You have 5 people demanding transportation. You have 5 people demanding massages and everything else. And with all that pent-up demand means more jobs are created. So if you're an accountant, maybe you get another family to do it. If you're a lawyer, maybe you're going to represent them. If you're a teacher, maybe you're going to teach them. If you're a healthcare worker, maybe you're going to do that. And then not only to get that benefit of more jobs being created, so it feeds upon itself, is that when you bring in more immigrants, a lot of times they have different culture and values and different ways of looking at things that you didn't think about. And with that, as been proven in the history of the United States, the overall economy benefits from all these new ideas and new ways of doing things, which relates back to productivity. So what do we have to do? Well, I'm kind of a free market guy. And I say the market's going to kind of tell you that if you can't find anybody to work, then you're going to have to pay them more. Now, when I ask businesses that, they're expecting to increase employment, and they say it's really hard to get workers. I say, well, how are you going to get the people? And some of them say word of mouth. Others say the internet. Others say search firms. But only 11% say increase starting pay. But that might be changing going forward because if they see opportunities to make profit, and yes, they have to pay more to their employees, they could still make more profits by getting more people. Or they might say in the free market, I've got an option to use machines or other capital equipment or other ways of doing it where I don't need as many workers. Otherwise, they might go to people and say, hey, instead of working 4 days a week, why don't you come back to 5 days a week? Okay. So if you take a look at natural births, which are in the yellow, and net migration, which is in blue, you'll see that we're not going to get it from making babies at this point. And this shows, hey, if we want to get a 0.5% increase in workers per year, how many additional immigrants are we going to have to attract? And we're talking 50,000 a year, 55,000 a year. going down the road, that is, farther down the road. Where are we getting them from? Well, currently we get the immigrants from Mexico, number 1, Laos and Thailand, number 2, India, number 3, Vietnam, number 4, Somalia, number 5, Liberia, number 6, Ethiopia, number 7, Korea, number 8, Canada, number 9. So besides Canada, which can probably fit in pretty easily here, there probably need to be changes made at the government level as well as the personal level to say, hey, we need more people to train people how to speak English or how to live in frozen climates, etc. Okay, so first half of the discussion, facing a worker shortage going forward. How are we going to deal with this? Many different ways. The market's going to lead us by changing prices, which are going to induce changes. Looking forward, you can kind of lead with those changes, or you can try to fight the market forces that are going to be happening. Okay, we're in an economic expansion. Let's move into part 2. Long live the expansion. Yes, we're producing record amounts here in Minnesota. United States is producing record amounts. The world's producing record amounts, and this has been going on for a couple years now. And as you can tell from the previous presentation, the expansion's going on pretty well. They're building on speculation that the expansion's going to continue. Now, the expansion hasn't been really gangbuster growth, but still, we've been kind of plodding along and gaining every year. Okay, now the expansion is very uneven. Here a picture shows across the country in 2013 how much output has changed by state. In Minnesota, you can see we increased at an above average rate of 2.8%. Now, I represent the 9th Federal Reserve District, which includes Montana, the Dakotas, Minnesota, northwestern Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Now, is anybody from North Dakota here? A few of you. So how'd you escape from, aren't they begging you to work up there, or what? Have you been back recently?
Yeah, I escaped in '85.
You escaped way back in '85.
It was really cold, and when you graduate from college, you said, just take the bus ticket and don't come back. It's either Denver or Minneapolis. Now it's the other way around.
And have you been back?
Yeah, I go back, my kids are up there.
Your kids are up there, are they working, or?
Yeah. So Lowe's starts out at $13.50 an hour with a $1,000 bonus if you stay for 3 months.
Ah, you get the $1,000 bonus, but you got to get it if you stay for 3 months.
But you start at $13.50 an hour.
$13.50 an hour in what city?
Grand Forks.
Grand Forks, which isn't even in the oil patch. You go towards the oil patch, and how much are they paying?
Well, the problem is in Jamestown, the manufacturer with 60 people had to move to Grand Forks because he was only paying $60,000 a year to his workers.
Did everybody hear that? They had to move because they were only paying $60,000 a year to the workers, and they couldn't find the workers. When I talk about market changes, go up to North Dakota, and you can see those market changes happening. It is what they call a crisis. Well, there's a crisis everywhere, right? Affordable housing crisis here, crisis there. Up there, if you go to a fast food restaurant in the oil patch, and you go through the drive-through, there'll be a sign there that says, sorry, due to the crisis we're in, it may take longer for you to get your food. Hiring all shifts, $1,000, $5,000 signing bonus, $18 an hour to start in the western part of North Dakota. When you give your order, you're giving it to somebody in California. And they just do it electronically back, right? It's kind of like a zombie land up there, actually. You go to the big box retailer, you walk in, and there's dirt all over the floors, and they'll have a machine come by and drop off a pallet, and everybody will look at the pallet and start walking towards the pallet, and they'll open it up, diapers. Now, the number one issue up there, of course, is finding workers. Number 2 issue up there is finding homes, places to live. There's one developer I talked with last week, built a 7-bedroom house with a TV room and a kitchen. He's renting out each of the bedrooms for $2,200 a month. Yes. Crazy busy up there. So the economy is very I mean, the expansion is very uneven. You got the boom times up in the oil fields. You got the solid growth that's happened in Minnesota. And then you got other areas of the country like Michigan and Ohio and Kentucky. Florida's still hurting. I mean, they went through a big bust. So very uneven geographically, very uneven socioeconomically, very uneven by sector. Now, what led us into this expansion wasn't the traditional home building. You know, you see here, home building leads us into into expansions. This time, natural resources, manufacturing, and technology led us into this big expansion that we're in. Not big, but long-term expansion that we're in. Now that home building's kicking in, that should progress us further. Now, what happens after an expansion? Nobody wants to say it, right? What comes after an expansion, by definition, is contraction or a recession. You could have inflation and expansion at the same time. But after the expansion in the business cycle, you get recession. So how many say we're in a recession right now? Statistics haven't caught up with us yet. How many say we'll be in a recession this year? How many say we'll be in a recession in 2015? 1, 2. How many say we'll be in a recession in 2016? A couple more. How about 2017? A few more. How many think we're never going to be in a recession again? Right? I mean, build on spec. Come on, let's just keep on building. Let's just keep on riding this thing. Well, what could throw us off from this expansion that we're having that is pretty solid base now in terms of a lot of different sectors are growing? There's a lot of risks out there, right? You could have China stop growing. You could have the euro going away. You could have major wars. You could have polar vortexes. You could have pandemics. You could have atomic bombs blowing up Chicago, you know? There's a lot of things that could happen that could throw us off course from the expansion. But right now, based on our surveys, based on our statistical models, it looks like the expansion is going to continue. Optimism is up. Businesses are normally optimistic, but one person pointed out, is going, wait a minute, whenever you get really high levels of optimism, then you get into a recession. High levels of optimism, then you get into a recession. How far more before the optimism isn't a good thing for the economy? Here is our expectations for employment growth based on our statistical model. Big gains in North Dakota. Minnesota, pretty flat next year in terms of employment growth after a pretty solid year this year. We asked business leaders, hey, what's going on with employment at your companies? To the right of the 50-yard line is expansion, and they're looking in all sectors except retail that the expansion should continue. How about wages? Wages increase maybe 2 or 3%. Higher up in North Dakota. Which is kind of surprising because when the number one issue is finding workers, how come people aren't demanding higher wages? Let's turn to real estate. You can see the cycles in real estate. How do the cycles happen? Well, right now, what do you see? Very low vacancy rates. You're seeing higher rental rates. You're seeing the government providing long-term 40-year fixed rate financing, non-recourse, meaning they can't come after you, they can come after the asset, to build apartments, fixed rate. You see socioeconomically that certain people have a lot of money. So what are the signals? Okay, let me go over this again. Low vacancy rates, rental rates rising, government's able to provide you money to build. What are you going to do?
Build houses.
You're going to build, right? Build apartments. And so wherever you go, you see apartments being built, right? And now here in Brooklyn Park, you see other things being built, like the commercial and industrial. So this is the United States vacancy rate, about 5%. In the Minneapolis area, it's one of the lowest in the nation, around 3%, less than 3%. This chart here shows the actual cycle in real estate. Because you get the signal to build, so what do? You build apartments. By the time you say, hey, I see I can make money by building apartments. I better build some apartments. Well, where am I going to build them? I got to get a developer and a contractor and get permits approved and get it built. And then when you get it built, you got to fill it with people and fill it with stuff. By the time you get this signal, and by the time it's actually built and filled, it could be 3 years later. And 3 years later, it's like, oh my God, everybody had the sign, so everybody built, and vacancy rates went back up again. So here it is. Recovery, decreasing vacancy rates, low new construction, moderate absorption, low employment growth, low negative rental rate growth. Greenville, South Carolina, Providence, Rhode Island, Greensboro, North Carolina, Jackson, Mississippi. Then you got the expansion, decreasing vacancy rates, moderate high new construction, high absorption, high employment growth, high rental rate growth. Minneapolis, near the top. This is at the end of last year. What comes next? The hypersupply stage. What's in hypersupply? Increasing vacancy rates. Moderate high new construction. So even though vacancy rates are going up, they're still constructing stuff. Low or negative absorption of that space. Moderate or low employment growth. And then all of a sudden rental rate growth starts to soften. That's the hypersupply. Who's in that? Miami, Washington, D.C. Does Miami have something like 50 high-rise apartments going up in downtown? And then you got the recession, of course, increasing vacancy rates, low new construction, low absorption, negative employment growth. If you take a look at the cycle for office space, Minneapolis is still in recovery. Again, at the end of last year, so we might have moved up into kind of an expansion. There's more grumblings and talking about building new office space. Okay, talked a little bit about the risks, but overall, it looks like the expansion should continue for another year with more employment, more output, some increases in wages.